CYC is a free channel, presents the Word of God for everyone. Your support will help us to continue the mission. Visit our website, cycnow.com. Even $1 will make a difference.
Loans are a very complicated subject. Loans are a very complicated subject. I want you to know that school costs money, right? And it costs a lot of money. When I was in graduate school, without any scholarships or anything, one credit in graduate school was $1,200. So for a 3-credit class, it was $3,600 plus books. So there's 10 sessions, 10 3-hour sessions. So every class session of me sitting in class was about $400 to just sit in that class, right? Plus, of course, the time of your professors to grade the papers and all that stuff, right? So school is going to cost a lot of money, and it's very likely that many of you will take loans. So what you should do first is check for grants, which is money that somebody gives you without expecting anything back. A scholarship is a type of a grant. They just give you money, right? And then, of course, your parents, so first start with the scholarships. What's available? That somebody will just give me the money and that's it. I just have to do something. And then the next thing is your parents will try as best as they can to pay. And then maybe you'll try, and then if you can, and that's another topic for another day, and then you take out loans, right? So there are a few types of loans, and I want to tell you a pretty crazy story about someone who told me the story when they were, I think, a sophomore or a junior. They told me that over the first few years of college, they were paying someone to arrange for their loans for them. They were paying them a few $100s to go and fill out the applications, to pick the right loans. There's all the decisions that person made that they got paid for were things that everybody else does for free. But it's because that student didn't ask the right questions. So this is the thing. Again, please ask questions. I just want to talk about 2 types of loans, and then for one of those, for the first type, there's 2 kinds of loans in that type. The 2 types of loans are federal, like government loans, public loans, and private loans. A public loan is the first type of loan in general you should try to get because it's cheaper. It's cheaper. Cheaper means the interest rate is low. So remember when I told you that $1,000 can turn into $5,000 if your interest rate is high? So when it's a cheaper loan, that $1,000 only turns into like $3,000 or $3,500. Yeah, Mario. I'm sorry, yes. So what is an interest rate? Okay. An interest rate is what it costs to spend money now that you don't have. Okay? That's the cost of it. So what does that mean? That means if I say, Mike, I want to buy, this Mangaleya here, right? And I go and I want to buy it and it turns out to be $1,000, but I don't have $1,000. So I'm going to say, hey, Mike, can you lend me $1,000, please? And Mike is going to say, Makar, I was going to do something with that $1,000, but I'm going to give it to you only if you pay me 10% per year, right? On top of the $1,000. So he's going to charge me 10% interest. So after 1 year, I don't just owe him back the $1,000, I owe him $1,100. $1,000 plus 10%, which is another $100. That's what interest is. Interest does this thing called compounding that we don't have to explain what the word means, but interest does this thing where every single year, so let's say I owe Mike $1,000 and I didn't pay him back after 1 year. If I pay him back in 2 years, he's going to charge me an additional 10%, not just on the $1,000, but on the $1,100, right? So I'm not just going to pay him $1,200. I'm not going to pay him $1,000. I'm going to pay him $1,100 plus 10% of $1,100. Right? So it's going to be like a 1,200 million billion. So it's going to be a lot of money. So the point is, guys, that because of compounding, you want to borrow as little and as cheaply as possible. You want to borrow as little and as cheaply as possible. As little as possible means that you've exhausted all the options. You went through scholarships, your parents have spent money, you've worked and spent some money, and then you borrow whatever's left over. That's how you borrow as little as possible. To borrow as cheaply as possible, you have to start with public loans and then go to private loans. Is that clear? Are you guys with me? I really hope this is important. By the way, when I graduated grad school, I owed a lot of money. Okay, even with scholarships and that. And I still haven't paid it off. It's a lot of money, right? It could take years and years to pay it off. Some of the repayment plans go up to 25 years. Do you believe that? It could take up to 25 years to pay off your loans. So this is something you're going to be stuck with for a long time. And if you're a teacher, it probably wasn't worth spending all that money in the first place, but that's a different topic for another day. So to borrow, again, borrow as little as possible. Scholarships, parents, you, savings, then borrow. Borrow as cheaply, public, and then federal. What does it mean to borrow public? There are federal and state loans. These loans have the lowest interest rate. So instead of it being 10% between me and Mike, between me and the government, it's going to end up being like 5%. Actually, what it's going to end up being is about 3.86% right now. The rates get updated almost every year. So I'm not going to say it's a low interest rate, but it's lower than it was in the past because of just the world. So there are two types of public loans besides when it comes to federal. One is subsidized and one is unsubsidized. What does that mean? If you remember when I was telling you that after 1 year it's $1,100, and then after that it's 10% on $1,100, and then it's 10% on 10% of $1,100, right? So it just keeps growing. For a subsidized loan, that growing doesn't happen until you start paying your loan back. So it just stays at that amount until you start paying the money back. Is that clear? So you are going to be in school for 4 years, for 8 years, whatever. For a subsidized loan, you're going to be paying back, when you start paying back, exactly what you borrowed years ago. So this is a great thing. That's why it's called subsidized. Yeah.
Does this count for graduate, undergraduate, or just undergraduate?
It counts for both. Yeah, but subsidized is no longer offered for graduates. So I have some subsidized loans, not enough, but so subsidized loans, you're not paying any interest while you're in school. Unsubsidized loans, the interest is accumulating while you're not in repayment, while you're in school. So that means you'll still get the same rate, the 3.8 whatever % for an undergraduate loan, but the interest is growing as you're in school, right? So you just keep, the amount you owe is growing and growing and growing. Why am I telling you about unsubsidized? Why doesn't somebody just borrow all of subsidized and that's it? Don't grow any interest, right? Because there's a limit on the amount of subsidized that you can borrow. You can't borrow everything subsidized. And guys, I know the people sitting in the front are mostly the juniors and seniors, and the parents are in the back. The parents are wide awake and the kids don't care. But I want you to know that this money, you in the front are going to owe it, not the people in the back, right? So yeah, not your parents in general, unless your parents can help you with that. But you are going to owe this money, right? So remember, I'm here and I'm working now, but I owe lots of money back to pay back my loans, right? And some of these amounts you could end up paying, imagine your payment is like $1,000 a month you have to pay back your loans. $1,500 a month to pay back your loans if you borrow a lot of money. And it's going to be under your name, and it's your life, and it's your job, and it's your expenses, and you got to pay back the loan so you can't buy a car. You got to pay back the loan so you can't buy a house. You got to pay back the loan so you have to make sure to work a second job if you need to. And then, or you can't get married because you can't pay for a wedding ring or whatever you got to pay for when you get older, right? So all these things you got to pay attention to because it's your life and it affects every decision you're going to be making. I hope that's very, very clear. And I just spent about 3 million minutes talking about this. So sometimes as Egyptians, okay, we have this aversion to loans. We don't like loans. We say, I'm going to pay everything cash. I'm not going to borrow any money. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not borrowing any money. The decision is not that simple. The decision is not that simple. Please do not give up opportunities because you want to make a very simple decision. The decision about loans and how much you borrow and how much you spend and all that stuff is affected by one main thing, which is the career you're going to have. Because that determines how much money you're going to be getting back over the years. So if you just have to borrow $20,000 to afford a school that's going to give you a career where you make an extra $20,000 a year or $40,000 a year, borrow the $20,000, right? But if you're going to become a teacher, and you're only going to be making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, and it doesn't start at 50 either, I'll tell you that. So here in New York City. But if you're going to make that much money, don't borrow $100,000 a year, right? Because by the time you graduate, it's going to be $140,000, $150,000, and then you still have to study again, and all this other stuff, and you have to think about so many things. All I'm trying to say, I'm not giving you the answer, I'm just trying to say, don't oversimplify the decisions. Don't be lazy in making the decisions. You have to evaluate all the options. There are so many options. You have to think and ask about them, please.
The more students that you have with you in the household that go to colleges, the more money you would get because college is expensive.
What it does is that the program of the school pays for your whole tuition.
Applications get accepted, you would find out in like January or December, like during that Christmas break, you would find out what schools you got accepted to.
This program is not for everybody. It's a needs-based program, so it's for families of low income.